Okay. The next section here basically talks about the contents of the 11 caves, Qumran caves. And it basically says, like, I'll say Cave 1 contains several, like Cave 2 discovered by the Bedouins in 52, Cave 3 discovered by archaeologists in 52. It just who found it and maybe what some of the basic contents were. Then it has an aerial view. I showed this before, an aerial view of this whole place here. Being on the moon. Anyhow, then it gives the journey. I won't go into this, but I'll just show you briefly. This is a journey of where the scrolls were found, who found them, and then where because they've been shipped all over the world, all over the globe, to be photographed, this and that. But it starts at 47. They're moved all over the place. They finally get to Jerusalem. Then Jerusalem's going through all that. Israel's going through all their trouble. War and battling going on, fighting and all this. Then there's people trying to have access to them and, hey, send it to us, send it to this. Some are for sale, some are bought by individuals. It says here in June 1954, an ad placed by Samuel. Samuel in the Wall Street Journal appears. The 4 Dead Sea Scrolls, biblical manuscripts dating back at least to 200 BC are for sale. This would be an ideal gift to an educational or religious institution by any individual or group. Then it says the scrolls are purchased. Now the scrolls are purchased a month later for $250,000 by Mr. Sidney Estridge at an elaborate meeting of the Hotel New York City. Lawyers, experts, this, that, and the other thing. Let's see, this here, Orthodox Church. Anyhow, they talk about all this. A lot happens as these things are being moved around. Many people want them, others just want them for their value to be sold, whatever the case is. Anyway, today they are at the Shrine of the Book. The Shrine of the Book, a wing of the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, houses the majority of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, this is the next section here. Beyond Qumran. The search for more scrolls fans out as far as Masada as treasure hunters flock to the region in search of history. Let's see here. When at last the area and caves around Qumran seemed to have yielded all their secrets, archaeologists and Bedouins alike turned their search to the area south of the western shore of the Dead Sea. About 11 miles from Qumran, the Dead Sea about 11 miles from Qumran. As the black market flourished, scholars had become increasingly concerned about irretrievably losing valuable documents to tourists who purchased them from the Bedouins and their intermediary Kando, the cobbler turned antiquities dealer. Given the daunting task of controlling the situation, Gerald Lancaster Harding, the British director of the Department of Antiquities of Jordan, decided that retrieving the scrolls was the first priority, wherever and whoever they came from. Though laws had been hastily enacted regarding the sale of scrolls, the department adopted a policy of no questions asked and instructed the team to buy whatever they could find. By now, the Bedouin Ta'amira tribe, had secured the monopoly on cave looting. They policed the area to keep other tribes from horning in and took their finds straight to Kando, who gave them money and then took the scrolls to Harding, who paid him without questions. Thus, business was transacted and everyone was satisfied. Now, let me see here. It shows an image here of the where there were significant finds. That is the Dead Sea. And I don't know if you can see the names of the places, but these are the locations of where they found the scrolls. That would be the east or west side of the Dead Sea. Anyway. That's the Dead Sea, right around the Dead Sea area. Hence the Dead Sea Scrolls. Significant finds. In 1951, the Bedouins discovered 4 caves, 11 miles south of Qumran. That's where this whole thing started. And 2 miles inland from the Dead Sea. Exploration of this area led them to 5 more sites. The Wadi Murabaat. This site had 4 caves containing fragments of 170 different texts from the Great Hebrew Minor Prophets scroll in Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. This find has been a pivotal source of Jewish scholarship. Also found was evidence of the occupation of refugees from the Second Jewish Revolt against the Romans. Baskets, cloth, rope, marriage contracts, and letters from Simeon bar Kochba, the revolt's messianic leader. Okay, another find at Nahal Hever. This site consisted of 10 caves containing one of the largest caches of documents found in the Judean desert, located between En Gedi or Gedai and Masada, excavated in 1960 through 61. Caves 5 and 6, called Cave of Letters, had material that had been dated 94 to 132 CE. I do not know what the letters represent. Someone probably does. Included was a leather water skin with 15 letters from Bar Kochba, a wrapped package inside a leather purse with 35 personal financial records of a woman named Babatha, and 5 contracts concerning Eleazar, a farmer from Ein Gedi. Cave 8, called Cave of Horror, contained 40 skeletons, believed to be the remains of those who had sought refuge in the caves from the revolt. 3 of them bore ostraka shards of pottery on which were written the names of the dead. Another site was Nahal Se'alim. The Bedouins sold the documents found here to the Rockefeller Museum, where they are referred to as the Sayal Collection. Of particular interest is the archive of Salome B. Levi, containing 8 documents from the beginning of the 2nd century CE in Greek and Aramaic. Another site is the Wadi Dilaye, excavated in 1962. This site north of Jericho contained 40 papyrus fragments of Sumerian legal documents from the 4th century, mostly deeds of sale for slaves. There were also seals, coins, and the skeletal remains of 205 people. This cave was thought to be a hideout of wealthy Samaritans who fled Samaria after the invasion of Alexander the Great in 333 BCE. The last site, I believe, let me see here. Yeah, the last site is Masada, which I think was a fortress of some sort, something like that. The Masada. The excavation of this iconic site by Israeli archaeologist Yigael Yadin and his team took place between 1963 and 1965. It was a massive undertaking. Yadin's excavation of Masada revealed fragments of 7 biblical scrolls found not in pots or caves but secreted in the section identified as the synagogue. Dating from the Roman period, they are copies of Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Ezekiel, Psalms, Songs of the Sabbath sacrifice, and the Hebrew text of Ben Sirah. These scrolls match the traditional Masoretic text, suggesting that by the 1st century CE, a stabilized text was already in place. I wonder when the Byzantine thing, I got another rabbit hole. Masoretic refers to the school of the Masoretes, Jewish biblical scholars of the late Middle Ages, who standardized traditions of punctuation, accentuation, and divisions of the consonantal text of the medieval Hebrew Bible, in addition to the biblical scrolls. Fragments written on papyri in Greek and Latin were found. These are mostly military documents of Roman soldiers stationed at Masada after the revolt. Okay. I think we'll leave that right there. No, let's go on. We got time. The fortress at Masada. Let's show some images here. Let me see. There we go. You look at these places and it just makes you want to have a glass of water. Very dry. The fortress at Masada. Of the scrolls found beyond the caves of Qumran, the ones unearthed during the excavation of the fortress of Masada are especially intriguing as they have survived in a place where a great siege occurred. The fortress of Masada was built by the Jewish priest and revolutionary Maccabeus in the 2nd century BCE and refortified by Herod, or Herod, depends on how you say it, the Roman appointed king of the Jews. He gets quite the mention in the Bible. Appointed king of the Jews between 37 and 31 BCE. It was an elaborate and impregnable structure on the top of a diamond-shaped mountain overlooking Jebel Uzdum to the south, the chain of Moab beyond Petra to the east, and the great Mount Hermon to the north. From its ruins, archaeologists have surmised that it was meant to be the ultimate safe house. Within the fortification, there were cisterns for collecting precious water and a palace and baths adorned with columns and porticos. The interior was kept cultivated as a garden intended for growing food, and immense stores of arms and provisions were laid up in the event of a siege. Sounds like a bunch of preppers. After the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, the Romans were determined to stamp out the last of the Sicarii rebels, radical Jews who were devoted to avenging the wrongs perpetrated on them by the Romans. In 73 CE, the Sicarii, led by the skillful and intrepid Eleazar ben Yair, took Masada as their last holdout. Flavius Silva, the Roman general, had his men hurl lighted torches at the fortress, and it caught fire. However, an adverse wind blew the flames toward the Romans, who retreated in confusion. As night fell, the wind changed, and the retreating soldiers watched in amazement as the stirred flames caught the wooden beams of the fortress and turned them to ashes. There was no hope for the Jews, so the Romans retired for the night, resolved to storm the remains of the fortress in the morning. There were 967 people holed up in Masada, men, women, and children. Their leader, Eleazar, was somehow able to convince them to commit mass suicide rather than submit to the Romans. I don't ever see that as an option. We know this because a few of the Jews, including an elderly woman, managed to conceal themselves in the vaults, and in the morning when the Romans arrived, to an eerie silence, survivors emerged to tell the grisly story. Let's see if we get a better shot of that right there. Little tidbit paragraph here and we'll wrap it up. Hollywood arrives in Masada. On a scrap of papyrus found in Masada, researchers were intrigued to decipher a verse from Virgil's, I can't pronounce that, Aeneid. Anna, sister, how my dreams terrify me and leave me hanging. They interpreted this as a reflection on a Roman soldier's reaction to the bodies of the martyred rebels. In 1981, Masada, a miniseries, was produced and aired by ABC. It starred Peter O'Toole as Flavius Silva and Peter Strauss as Eleazar ben Yair. The entire cast and crew descended upon the ancient ruin, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Imagine the ghost of the martyrs of Herat himself observing camera crews, actors, makeup, and costume artists, all the various hordes of people required to shoot a film, tromping through the once spectacular fortress. The ramp they built to access the mountaintop is still there today. We'll wrap it up there. This will be the next section. Yeah. Love you. God bless.